Ethan had always been intrigued by the dark web, drawn to its hidden corners where anything could be bought or sold. But when he came across a link titled "The Hidden Auction," something about it felt different. It wasn't like the usual strange items or forbidden goods. This felt personal. Without thinking, he clicked. The page loaded, and his screen flickered briefly before displaying a countdown and a single listing. The box. No description, no pictures, just a price and a note. The highest bidder wins, no turning back. A chill ran down his spine. It seemed like a joke, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more, something he didn't understand. He glanced around his dark apartment, his curiosity stronger than his fear. What's the worst that could happen? He clicked, "Bid now." As soon as Ethan clicked "Bid now," the countdown on the page seemed to speed up. A small, eerie notification popped up on his screen. "You are the highest bidder." His heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the screen, still unsure what he had just gotten himself into. The page flashed, and then, just as quickly, the auction page disappeared, replaced by a simple message: "Your item will arrive shortly." A wave of unease washed over him. He should have backed out. The warning signs were everywhere, but the thrill of it had clouded his judgment. His thoughts raced, wondering what this box could be. Was it some kind of joke? Maybe it was a prank, or worse, a scam. But no. The moment he had clicked, it felt like something far more sinister had begun. The next day, Ethan was at work when he received an unexpected email. His inbox contained no subject line, only an attachment. His fingers hesitated for a moment before opening it. Inside, there was a single image, a plain wooden box, old and worn, with strange symbols carved into the sides. The email was brief. "Your box has been delivered. Arrive home by midnight. Don't open it yet." His stomach tightened. A sense of dread settled in his chest. Arrive home by midnight. He didn't know who sent this, but there was something unmistakably ominous about it. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He tried to go about his day, but every time he looked at the clock, his mind wandered back to the box and the strange instructions he had received. By the time he got home, the house felt different, darker somehow, as if the walls were closing in on him. The door creaked as he pushed it open, and his eyes immediately searched for the box. There it was, sitting innocently on his kitchen table, as if it had always been there. Its presence felt out of place, as though it didn't belong in his apartment. He walked over slowly, his breath shallow. The symbols on the box glowed faintly in the dim light. His fingers hovered over it, the urge to open it gnawing at him. But the email had been clear. "Don't open it yet." Ethan pulled out a chair and sat, staring at the box for what felt like hours. His curiosity burned. What's inside? He had to know. Despite the warning, despite the fear that was gnawing at him, he couldn't resist. With shaking hands, he lifted the lid. As the lid creaked open, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Inside the box was nothing. At least, that's what it seemed at first glance. The inside was completely empty, save for a folded piece of paper resting at the bottom. He stared at it for a moment, confusion replacing the dread in his chest. Why would anyone auction off an empty box? With a trembling hand, he reached in and pulled out the paper. Unfolding it carefully, his eyes scanned the hastily written words. "You have opened the door. Now, you will see what others cannot." Before he could process the meaning of the note, a cold gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the lights. The apartment plunged into darkness. Ethan's heart raced, his pulse pounding in his ears. He reached for his phone, but the screen was dead. Panic gripped him as he stumbled toward the window, hoping to see the familiar glow of streetlights outside. But there was nothing, only pitch black, as if the world outside had ceased to exist. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it. A shadow, moving unnaturally fast across the wall. It wasn't a person. It didn't look human at all. Ethan froze, his blood running cold. The shadow stretched and twisted, taking form before his eyes. It was a figure, tall and thin, with hollow eyes that seemed to bore straight into his soul. A voice echoed in his mind, soft but insistent. "You are not alone anymore." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Was this a hallucination? Was he losing his mind? But the figure, it wasn't fading, it was real. Ethan backed away slowly, his legs trembling beneath him. Every inch of the room felt colder, the air thick with an unnatural presence. The figure in the corner remained motionless, its dark eyes locked onto him as if it had all the time in the world. The walls seemed to close in around him, the silence deafening except for the rapid thumping of his heart. He glanced down at the box in his hands. It was still open, the note inside mocking him with its cryptic message. "You have opened the door." What did it mean? He hadn't asked for this. He had just been curious. The figure began to move toward him, its limbs stretching unnaturally as it glided closer, leaving an icy trail in its wake. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as a voice, low and gravelly, echoed from the darkness. "You made the choice. You invited me in." Panic surged through him. He had to get out, but every step he took felt heavier, as if the very air had turned against him. His vision blurred, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. The door. He had to get to the door. But the figure was faster, its eerie presence engulfing the room. It reached out with a long skeletal hand, its cold fingers brushing against Ethan's shoulder. The touch sent a shock of ice through his body, paralyzing him with fear. And then, everything stopped. The figure froze in place, its hand still hovering just above Ethan's skin. The darkness seemed to recede, and the wind faded away. Ethan could hear his breath again, the weight on his chest lifting ever so slightly. The figure spoke one last time, its voice now softer, almost gentle. "You can't undo what's been done, but you can choose what happens next." The room returned to normal. The lights flickered back on, and the chill lifted. Ethan blinked, finding himself standing alone in the apartment. The figure was gone. The box remained on the table, the note still inside. His head spun. What had just happened? Had it all been a nightmare? Was he still in control? He walked to the window, peering outside. The night was still, but everything felt different now. He felt different. He had seen something no one else had, something he couldn't unsee. And now, the weight of that knowledge rested heavily on him. As he turned back toward the box, the thought struck him. What had he truly opened? He walked away from it, deciding that some doors, once opened, should never be revisited. But the questions would stay with him forever. What do you think happened to Ethan after this? Would you open such a door if given the chance? Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the story.